Pictured here are what appear to be the footprints of a wolf, bobcat, or other small predator. Predation is a relationship between two organisms where one feeds upon the other. Predators are usually secondary or tertiary consumers. Secondary consumers feed on herbivores, or primary consumers, who eat plants, which are producers. Tertiary consumers feed on secondary consumers. Together, these relationships create a food web, which shows all of the relationships between organisms in an ecosystem. All of the animals in an ecosystem fit into specific niches or roles. For example, deer eat plants and are a food source for wolves. This is their role in the ecosystem. Different predators may try to fit into the same niche, creating competition for resources. Whichever species is best fit for the environment will prevail and the other will go extinct. Zones in aquatic ecosystems are determined by how much light they receive. The photic zone receives enough light to support photosynthetic plants. The aphotic zone, however, does not receive light. The benthic zone is at the bottom of a body of water. Plants grow in the benthic zone of the photic zone where there is light, but not in the aphotic zone, for it is too dark and deep to support plants. There are many problems that can arise in an aquatic ecosystem. Eutrophication is a problem where too much algae grows and blocks light from entering the water, thus killing the plants and draining the water of oxygen. Another problem is acid precipitation, when chemicals find their way into the atmosphere, form acids, and then fall back to Earth with the rain. The acidic water then drains into lakes, harming the organisms that live there.
An important part of the ecology story is the climate. The climate is influenced by factors such as large bodies of water, such as Lake Michigan. Due to high specific heat of water, the lake acts as a type of heat sink, absorbing heat from the sun and storing it, making the surrounding areas have cooler summers and mild winters. The climate also has a huge impact on the aquatic biome of Lake Michigan. The aquatic biome in Lake Michigan relies on the climate being the right conditions to support the large amount of biomass it contains. However, the delicate balance could very easily be disrupted by global warming. As the human population growth increases at an alarming rate, so does the emissions of carbon dioxide, and therefore temperatures in the lakes are increasing. Global warming could increase the temperatures of Lake Michigan to the point where there would be serious impacts on the species that live in that aquatic biome. With increasing temperatures in lakes due to greenhouse gases, the greenhouse effect could seriously affect cold water fish, such as trout and salmon. These fish rely on cold water temperatures and could be soon displaced due to the rising temperatures in the lake. Such things like the thermocline found in Lake Michigan, which can be observed visually through the drastic change of water color and shade, where a distinct thin layer of water changes temperature more rapidly according to depth, are important to cold water species like the trout and salmon that thrive at lower temperatures that the thermoclines provide. If cold water fish die, then there will be a huge decrease in species diversity. Species diversity is necessary to have stable biological communities. Without cold water fish, the aquatic biome in Lake Michigan would be severely affected and unstable due to the decrease of species diversity. Furthermore, the climate is also affected by the large sleeping bear sand dunes. The sleeping bear sand dunes are an important factor in maintaining the climate for the surrounding terrestrial biome. A biotic factor that influences the sleeping bear dunes and therefore the climate is dune grass. This keystone species is small but significant contributor to maintaining the sand dunes. Without the dune grass, there would be increased amounts of soil erosion and the sand dunes wouldn't be able to hold their shape. Dune grass reduces the impact of weather on the dunes, helping maintain the significant climate the sleeping bear dunes have in that area.
In all environments, abiotic factors such as water, nitrogen, phosphorus, and carbon are required to sustain life. The water cycle is the cycle of water through environments from bodies of water to evaporation to precipitation. Water is essential to every organism in an environment from the producers to the predators. The nitrogen cycle cycles nitrogen from the ground to the atmosphere and helps the environment's producers photosynthesize their food. The phosphorus cycle moves the essential nutrient phosphorus to the soil for as phosphorus acts as a nutrient and limiting factor for plant growth. Lastly, the carbon cycle is a series of processes in which carbon is interconverted into the environment, involving the incorporation of carbon dioxide into living tissue by photosynthesis and its return to the atmosphere through respiration. All of these cycles are responsible for the movement of these 4 essential nutrients in the environment. The producers use nitrogen, phosphorus, and carbon to create food through photosynthesis, and then other organisms eat the plants to absorb the nutrients absorbed by the producers, and so on. This picture shows a population of birds migrating from their temporary winter home down south back to their northern summer home. In order to do this, the birds must develop a cognitive map to develop a pattern of migration that they can follow for every season change. Migration is not instinctive, but rather dependent on observational learning. This process of observational learning, or younger organisms learning by observing older organisms, is also known as imprinting. The younger birds must learn how to follow their parents to their temporary homes during the sensitive period so they can develop this cognitive map at a young age, so the pattern of migration is instilled in them by the time they must teach their offspring. Although these birds migrate depending on the seasons, they are not immigrating from an environment, and they are not immigrating to a new environment. This is because they move to adjust to climate, not to permanently leave an old location and move to a new location. Separately, if this species were to encounter an invasive species with similar niches, they would be competition among the 2 species, limiting the resources available to both species. The resource that sustained the population would become sparse, and the population would grow logistically because the resources would be running out more quickly than before this competition was introduced. If there was an unlimited amount of resources and no competition, the species of birds pictured in this photo would grow at an exponential rate.
Fungi don't live in isolation. They often interact with many species. In fact, some fungi are dependent on other organisms for survival. Symbiosis is the interactive relationship between 2 different species in which at least one species benefits and the other species may be impacted positively, negatively, or not impacted at all. There are 3 basic types of symbiosis: mutualism, communalism, and parasitism. Communalism is a symbiotic relationship in where one species benefits while the other species is not affected. Parasitism is a relationship in which one species, the parasite, benefits while the other species, the host, is harmed. Mutualism is the relationship in where both species benefit. In this picture shows lichen growing on trees. Lichen on trees are a unique organism because they are a mutualistic, symbiotic relationship between 2 organisms, fungi and algae. The fungi grows on the trees and collects moisture, which the algae needs. The algae, in return, can create food from the energy of the sun, which feeds the fungi. Ecological succession is the process where a biological community evolves over time. There are 2 different types of succession, primary and secondary. Primary succession occurs in prominently lifeless areas where region's soil is incapable of sustaining life as a result of newly formed dunes, lava flow, or rocks left behind by retaining glaciers. Secondary succession occurs in areas where communities have previously existed, but been removed by smaller scale disturbances that don't eliminate all the nutrients in life from the environment, but leave little. This picture shows reforestation, or intentional restocking of existing forests and woodlands that have been depleted, most likely through deforestation, as Michigan's Great Lakes area was the dominant logging area in the late 1800s. It is evident that this is reforestation as the trees have been planted and grown in a straight line. Deforestation starts secondary succession because the event of deforestation reduces an already established forest ecosystem.
This image shows a spider on the sand of a beach. It may be hard to see the spider at first because it seems to blend into its environment. This spider is using cryptic coloration. This is a specific type of coloration that enables an organism to camouflage itself within its environment. This, however, is not the only reason it's able to survive within the environment. Spatial learning is a process in which an organism can learn the things in their surrounding environment in order to better navigate through them. Spiders, like the one pictured, are able to navigate through environments and are able to find their way back to their web where they may find food. Also found on and along the beaches of the Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore are piping plovers. These birds are endangered as there's only around 80 nesting pairs at the park. These birds, just like spiders, also use cryptic coloration. As you may recall, that means an organism has the advantage of camouflaging within their environment. From an aerial view, these birds blend into beaches and their nests, making it harder for predators to see them. However, they are still victims of predation. One major reason their populations are dwindling is because of gulls. People may leave food out on the beach, which attracts gulls, which might attract predators, because gulls can be seen well from an aerial view as they do not have the advantage of camouflaging to the beach. Therefore, they are threatened. These birds reproduce sexually, meaning a male and a female partner is required. Sexual selection, the preference of a characteristic from one parent by another, plays a part. The piping plover, along with many other bird species, have female mate choice. Female mate choice means that females pick a male who she wants to reproduce with. Piping plover females pick a mate based upon a black ring that form around male birds' necks. If these birds are able to repopulate to their normal numbers, they will no longer be threatened. And since they are not an invasive species and have limiting resources, they would grow by K-selection. This means that growth would increase until it levels off due to lack of resources to support such high populations, meaning the birds would reach carrying capacity. This is different from R selection, which is exponential growth of a species, meaning they can thrive in an environment so well due to unlimited resources and lack of competition, they do not meet carrying capacity and may take over. Currently, however, they are able to live alongside similar species of birds because of resource partitioning. This basically means that other similar birds utilize other ecological niches. For example, ducks feed just off the shore in the water, whereas piping plovers feed on the shoreline. Thus, they both can survive in similar environments.